Hello, everyone. I'm Jeremiah Fleming, President and CEO of Altigen Communications. In a moment, I'll be interviewed by the good folks at Little Grapevine, in which I'll address a number of questions about Altigen Communications, our business strategies, and future prospects. But prior to that, I wanted to provide just a brief background on the company. Altigen is a cloud provider of Microsoft-centric unified communication solutions, which includes hosted PBX, contact center, and related technologies. Our business strategy today is primarily focused on Microsoft Teams, which we enhance with our cloud-based communications applications. We have about 60 employees. Our last 12 months revenues were approximately $10.7 million, and our net income for that same period was approximately $1.8 million. We're traded on the OTC markets under the symbol ATGN. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Fleming, President and CEO of Altigen Communications. Today, I'm going to provide an investor presentation overview of the Altigen company. So I think it's appropriate for me to get started just providing an overview of the organization and making sure you folks are familiar with what we're doing. So we've been a long-time provider of on-premises IP-PBX or phone system solutions, always built on the Microsoft platform. For the past 5 years or so, we've been migrating to a provider of unified communications as a service solutions, hosted in the cloud, always based on the Microsoft platform. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley, California. We've been in business for more than 20 years. We currently have more than 2,500 current customers. And you can see from some of the diagrams here, our fiscal 2019 year, which ended September 30, 2019. You can see our percentage of revenue. We are approximately 85% recurring revenues. I think it's also important to point out that a good chunk of the company, nearly 20%, is owned by the CEO, myself, as well as management and employees. And the other 67% is owned by private investors. Also want to quickly point out our distribution of employees. We're very R&D centric with our engineering team. Nearly half of our employees are in engineering and operations and support, with the remaining folks in G&A and sales and marketing. So before we get started with the company strategy and overview, I just want to provide a quick recap of our historical numbers for the past few years. And as you can see, I'm pointing out our performance from fiscal 2016 through fiscal 2019. Our fiscal year, as I mentioned, ends on September 30. So we just concluded the first half of our fiscal 20 year, and we'll compare those numbers as well. So our revenues have been growing pretty much each year. I think just as importantly, our net income, we've turned from a fairly significant loss in 2016 to a pretty significant product in 2019. Now, I do want to point out there's a really large number in 2018, and that number, we've accumulated quite a few NOLs over the past 20 years. We had to do an assessment of the value of those NOLs, and that now shows up as a net income number. But that's according to GAAP guidelines. But certainly, it's not a cash number; it's a non-cash number. But as we move forward into our fiscal 20 year, you can take a look at our performance. We're on track to grow from where we were in 2019, across the board in terms of both revenues as well as net income, and we'll continue to increase our cash position. Now, I do get a lot of questions from investors and shareholders. The questions are, boy, you guys are growing at about 8 to 10% a year. Why aren't you growing more quickly? And so I do need to talk a moment about the historical transition of our business from an on-premises company to a cloud company. And these columnar graphs show you that as we transition to the cloud, we are foregoing. First of all, we got out of the hardware business in 2015. We had a few vestiges of hardware sales in 2016 and 2017. And so that certainly is no longer in our top line revenue number. But as we convert customers to the cloud and they start paying us on a monthly recurring revenue basis, we're no longer recognizing the upfront license revenue as identified in the software and services columns. And we're also not generating as much software assurance, and software assurance is the maintenance agreement associated with on-premises one-time license sales. But the important thing to note is that our cloud revenue is growing nicely. And unfortunately, as we migrate away from the old business, that's going to decline. And it does mute the growth on the cloud side. So I think this slide probably provides a better example. If we look at our cloud revenue growth over that same period in the 4 years, and the 4-year period ends in fiscal 2016 through fiscal 2020, and we've had over 300% revenue growth in our cloud. So that's pretty nice growth. I think we can do better than that, but it certainly shows you or demonstrates where the value of this company is, where our focus is on growing our cloud business. But to really understand our company, I think it's important to point out that we have two distinct go-to-market strategies. The first is our Altigen MaxCS, that's our historical legacy IP PBX. And we have lots of customers in that business that have been on premises for quite some time. And our real focus there is to migrate those on-premises PBX customers to our cloud, where we generate a heck of a lot more revenue and keep the customers much longer on that basis. We also leverage an organization called Fiserv, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's the largest financial services software company in the world, who delivers our hosted PBX along with our contact center solutions to their customer base. And that's certainly an area that has a lot of potential and current revenue. And finally, we're in the process of adding additional applications to our SIP services. Our SIP services are our SIP communication services, our phone service that we deliver with our IP PBX to drive additional customer sales. Now, that contrasts with our Microsoft Teams phone system line of business. And I should point out before I transition to that our MaxCS IP PBX line of business is very much focused on the SMB market. Our Microsoft Teams phone system business is focused on the mid-size enterprises and large enterprises. And in this regard, we have a different go-to-market strategy because MaxCS isn't the phone system, Teams is the phone system. So we leverage that opportunity differently. So our first objective is to drive new customer acquisitions with our direct routing, same SIP communication services we use for our PBX, but direct routing is the term Microsoft uses to provide phone service for Teams. So that's number one. That's a solution we launched about 6 months ago. Number two is to integrate our new front stage omnichannel contact center to Teams for the mid-size and enterprise customers who tend to have many more contact center agents than a small business customer. Finally, our strategy is to acquire or partner with technology companies who have solutions or services that can enhance Altigen's Teams solutions and services. So I'll talk a bit more about each of these lines of business in the coming slides. So first of all, I do get a lot of questions. Okay, what do you do with your IP PBX, and how does that compare to Teams? Well, as I mentioned, we have well over 1,000 customers that still have our PBX on premise that we're looking to migrate to the cloud. And when we offer a cloud service, we have it's complete end-to-end service. So we start with a provisioning portal where it's very easy to set up for a customer to set up their employees and phone numbers using our portal. We then deliver SIP services. Again, SIP services is a phone service, a phone calling service, if you will, delivered over IP, over the internet. That connects to our PBX in the cloud. And because Fiserv OEMs our technology, we have two models here. One is Altigen hosts our MaxCS PBX in our data center. The other model is Fiserv hosts the MaxCS in their data center. But we deliver the same set of services. So we drive the business telephone users. We also offer, or will be offering very soon, the front stage contact center for both of those solutions. And finally, we also have some call routing and queuing capabilities that I call MaxCS workgroups that are designed for departmental requirements. So when we put that all together, we're able to deliver a complete end-to-end solution. just want to point out again that the Altigen PBX is hosted in our data center. Fiserv has complete control. They host our same PBX. It's the Altigen PBX, but hosted in the Fiserv data center. From a revenue perspective, we deliver our SIP communication services, which are required to connect to our PBX, whether it's Altigen or Fiserv. We price those on a per minute basis. Our PBX system, then, we price both PBX users and the applications that you see here on the slide. Both are priced on a per user per month basis. And then the entire solution is sold and supported by Altigen if it's in our cloud, Altigen partners if it's in our cloud, or Fiserv if it's in their cloud. That's different from our Teams line of business, which is very much focused on leveraging Microsoft Teams phone system as part of Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft Teams, if you're not familiar with that, is part of Microsoft Office 365. So you'll see that the solution delivery models are quite similar. The real difference is that Teams phone system is the PBX or the corporate phone system, whereas in the MaxCS line of business, it's the Altigen PBX, that's the phone system. But we still deliver the same provisioning portal. We call our SIP communication services direct routing, that's Microsoft's term. We connect that to Teams phone system, and then on the back end, we also drive additional application sales. In this case, the Teams PBX users are licensed directly from Microsoft, but the value-add services, such as the Front Stage Contact Center and the Altigen Workgroups, those are Altigen applications that we deliver, and we deliver for the customer integrated with Teams, which are priced on a per user per month basis. And in this case, the entire solution is sold by Altigen or our Microsoft partners, and we support the entire deployment. So very similar delivery models, but focused on two different markets. And I think it's important to point out for folks that may not be familiar with Microsoft Teams, it is the fastest growing application in the history of Microsoft. And interestingly, Microsoft Teams, which is a component of Office 365, which most folks have heard of, there are more than 500,000 deployments of Teams today, and I'm going to say 500,000 deployments, 500,000 different companies have deployed Microsoft Teams. There are over 1 million deployments of Office 365, so there's still plenty of growth to deploy Microsoft Teams. But just a year ago, there were approximately 10 million Teams users. Today, there are more than 75 million Team users. So that has been really dramatic growth. It was already the fastest growing application in the history of Microsoft, but more dramatic, much of that brought on by the work at home situation that we've experienced with this pandemic. But the good news for Altigen is once a company has deployed Teams, that allows us to go in and sell our solutions to upgrade a customer using Microsoft Teams to Microsoft phone system, Microsoft Teams phone system, and deliver our SIP service and our applications. So tremendous growth opportunity in this market. So just to summarize on our key strategies, number one is monetize Altigen's on-premises PBX. That's our MaxCS PBX that we've developed based on Windows Server, and monetize that customer base by converting them to the cloud. Number two is to partner with Fiserv to establish a leadership position for Altigen as well as Fiserv as the leading communications provider in the financial services market. Now, fortunately, we're able to leverage Altigen's cloud solutions and services for both our current IP PBX as well as Teams phone system, which gives us an opportunity to address both markets. With respect to Teams, we're certainly focusing on driving growth for Altigen by offering SIP services, applications, and support services to those 75 million Teams users, 500,000 companies using Microsoft Teams and growing today. And finally, we're looking to build, acquire, or partner with technologies which we can enhance our Altigen's team solutions and services to further drive that revenue growth. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, we have our contact information right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry, for that great presentation. And just to let everyone know who's listening to the presentation, or if you're listening to it later, um, that you can ask Jerry questions by that were maybe not answered in this presentation or the Q&A section by emailing us at conferences@littlegrapevine.com, and we'll make sure to get the question to Jerry and get you the answers. So, Jerry, I have several questions for you here, and we can answer them. And they might be a little bit redundant, but there's some things you want to really focus on that I think are important for people to understand your story. So we'll start with that now. Can you please talk about how COVID-19 has impacted your current customer base and new customer acquisition efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. As you probably know, most of our current customers are very small businesses. And we have seen a few cancellations, not a lot, but a few cancellations and some requests for extended terms, as some of these very small businesses are really struggling to stay in business. Now, regarding the new customer acquisition situation, is that today, and hopefully this will change soon, but today, most of the IT departments have put all new projects on hold as they're scrambling to support this new environment of work-at-home workforce. But we expect that to free up pretty soon. And in fact, with our solutions, we should be able to take advantage of the new model of work at home and not so much work in the office.
Great. Are you seeing on-premise legacy customers that have been dormant for some time coming back to Altigen to update their on-premise licenses or adopt even a new cloud platform that haven't done it yet?
Yeah, I think just because of the rush, what we've seen is the cloud customers are fine. They have all the tools that they need to be able to support their work-at-home workforce. But we have seen, and we saw this in our Q2 revenue, that a number of the on-premise customers had to purchase some additional licenses in order to support their work-at-home workforce. I think that'll be a temporary situation. I don't think we'll continue to see a lot of license purchases going forward, but we do expect to see these same customers migrating to the cloud so that they're prepared next time that they might have to send a large percentage of the workforce to work from home.
That's interesting because I know that when have been going through your transition for the past 5 years or so, that you had the low-hanging fruit. You converted a lot of your legacy customers. It's that last maybe 50% that you're trying to work with here. Maybe this kind of will motivate them to convert from the on-premise to cloud solution, I assume here.
Yeah, particularly when they get back in business. Most of our small business customers are going to be right part of that, that CARES program, and they're applying for loans just to meet payroll and pay their business expenses. But once they get back to work and we can get things back to some sense of normalcy, yeah, I think it will definitely help to incent those customers to move to the cloud so that they don't face business disruption with their phone system.
So while COVID-19 has probably accelerated demand for UCaaS solutions, and as competitors scramble to capture market share, do you see product pricing environment changing at all as this competition increases?
I don't. We haven't seen, any pricing pressure. Maybe that's because everyone had to pay whatever the prevailing rates were because they had no time to do any real evaluation. But I think what the real opportunity is going to be now that companies have to support their remote workforce, they're going to need to deploy solutions that enable them to do that. We can look at, what we talked about with Teams going from 10 million Teams users in July of last year to May of this year, 75 million users, and they're paying Microsoft for those for all of that licensing, and certainly not having a problem with that, or they wouldn't be doing it. But from our perspective, now this sets us up with a whole new breed of customer that's now has deployed Teams, and instead of looking for discounts from vendors like Altigen, what they're going to do is get rid of their existing legacy phone systems and not have to pay that extra fee. It's far more cost effective to go with Teams and with Altigen. So I think we're fine on that side.
Great. Now, also in the previous Little Grapevine presentation, you indicated that Altigen maintained approximately 1,750 on-premise legacy customers with 80,000 users. What steps are you taking to convert these customers to cloud-based services? And what percentage of these customers do you anticipate making the transition in the next 12 months?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have come up with, because a lot of these customers are smaller, it's a little bit skewed when we look at the total number. The average number of users, is a decent number. But we actually have, when you look at the stratification, a few customers have hundreds of users, and it kind of skews the results for everybody else. But the majority of those customers, tend to be in somewhere between 15 to 30 users. So for them, what we've offered is some new simplified bundle pricing that makes it really simple for them to migrate to the cloud. In fact, it's less expensive to go with our cloud solution than to pay their current phone bill and their maintenance on our solution. So you say, if it's less expensive, how do we make money? Because we offer the complete suite of services. They're no longer paying companies like Verizon and AT&T for the phone service. That comes to Altigen, so we can afford to do that and actually be much more profitable. But in addition to that, we have a pending new release. We're adding a lot of new UC features, unified communications features, into our solution. And what we've done actually for the first time, what we will do for the first time with this new release is that the only way for a customer to take advantage of these new features is to migrate to the cloud. They're not going to be available for on-premise customers. So I think that will be, in addition to financial incentive, that'll be a nice business incentive for those customers to move. Then finally, I've talked a lot about our front stage contact center. We're in the final phases of integrating the front stage contact center to the MaxCS IP PBX. And that also will only be available as a cloud solution. So for customers that want to upgrade their contact center, they'll need to move to the cloud.
Great. So if we move on to some more questions here. You had indicated before that Altigen can generate additional revenue per customer if the customer adds subscribers and new employees by offering new add-on solutions. What new add-on services is Altigen currently developing or actively marketing?
Yeah, so we do actually have a number of new applications and services that we're in the process of launching. The first that I'll mention is our direct routing solution for Teams, which is, as I mentioned previously, that's our phone service over the internet that connects directly to Teams for all of these 500,000 organizations and 75 million users that are migrating to Teams. We can now light up Teams with the phone service. So that solution we introduced about 6 months ago, and we're continuing to attract new customers with that. The next, I think, is also quite interesting, and we recently announced a partnership with a company called Neustar, and they have a solution called Trusted or Trust ID, and that solution works with Altigen SIP communication services to validate that the caller is actually the caller. I'll give an example that's like when you log in, if you get a new computer or a new phone, you log into Google or Microsoft Office or something, and it wants to verify that that device is actually yours, and you have to go through some additional authentication steps. In the same way for a phone call, Trust ID will validate the caller's device to make sure it's really the caller. And the significance is, particularly for financial institutions, a lot of scammers call in and try to fake. They get a piece of information and try to fake that they're actually the customer of that bank or credit union, and try to get the information out of that agent and get access to the customer's account so they can drain it. And this helps prevent that. Sorry. I'll take a drink, sorry. Hopefully. Okay, sorry about that. Should be good. In addition to the Trust ID offering for our SIP communication services, we're also planning to launch a new SMS service, and this will be interesting to small businesses. So with our business SMS service using Altigen SIP communication services, a customer or prospective customers can actually text the business as well as call them. Even though they're texting a landline, it'll come through to a representative in the company so they can handle that customer request. And then perhaps one of the most significant new additions is the front stage omnichannel contact center. We announced that partnership probably around 6 months or so ago, and we've been working very closely with the front stage organization to integrate that solution to MaxCS. And next up, we'll integrate it to Teams as well. But we expect to see a nice revenue contribution once we bring this product to market, which will likely be in the third calendar quarter of 2020.
Hey, Jerry, when you look at the your Trust ID offering, Do you see yourself doing your competitors also having a similar product? You think you're one of the few ones out there with a similar product? I know security is a big issue right now in the UCaaS industry, and it's good that you're getting ahead of it. So maybe you could talk about yourself in terms of continuing to build trusted services, and how it compares to what your competitors are offering.
Yeah, I mean, they may be offering the service. We really haven't seen that from the traditional SIP providers. But given the fact that it's really important to financial institutions like community banks and credit unions, our primary distribution channel will be Fiserv. The only way for the Fiserv customer to get this protection, if they want to use Fiserv services, is they need to go through Fiserv, actually purchase the Altigen SIP communication services, and then on top of that, it's an additional fee for the Trust ID services. So because of that relationship, I think we really aren't expecting to see much competition, because they actually need to interrogate your database, right, to verify the customer. And Fiserv, doesn't let their competitors or our competitors do that.
Okay. So in previous presentations, you mentioned that 70% of your revenue was being driven by new customers, while 30% was being driven by legacy customers. Is this still the case?
Yeah, well, and actually we're saying that our revenues, and we're talking about new revenues, right? Because we obviously have a lot of historical revenue, which would come from existing customers, but from new revenue and new customer acquisition revenue, yeah, around today, about 75% of our cloud revenues are based on new customers, and about 25% of our cloud revenues are based on, and I'm saying new revenues that we would pick up each quarter, are 25% based on existing customers. So that's flipped. When we first started, 75% was coming from our existing premise customers and 25% from new, and now it's gone the other way.
I think you talked about this in your presentation, but maybe worth talking about again. Can you describe Altigen's current marketing and sales strategy for finding and acquiring new customers? I know you probably went over this in the presentation, but it might be good to talk about it again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, we do have, in particular for those folks that might not have seen the lead-in presentation, Altigen has two unique lines of business. The first is our hosted PBX business, and this is the hosted PBX is software PBX that Altigen actually develops and supports, and we target the SMB market with that solution. So in order to drive revenue, we primarily sell through the historical Altigen channel partners. A lot of those being network solution providers, and we focus a lot of that effort, because we have so many on-premises customers. A lot of efforts focus on migrating those on-premises customers to the cloud, because it represents a significant revenue increase for both the partner and for Altigen. And then within that hosted PBX line of business, that's where Fiserv falls. And as you may know, or as folks may know, Fiserv is the largest software provider for financial institutions in the world. So Fiserv sells the Altigen Cloud PBX in addition to our Bank by Phone, our Cloud Bank by Phone application, and they integrate it with their community bank and credit union solutions. And that Altigen solution, which is branded as a Fiserv solution, is sold to their base of approximately 15,000 customers. So most of those customers are brand new customers to Altigen. So that's our PBX side of the business. It's focused on migrating our base and driving new business through the Fiserv customer base. On the other hand, we also have launched, actually just this fiscal year, launched our Microsoft Teams phone system line of business. And for this line of business, we don't target SMB, but we target mid-size organizations and enterprise customers, because those are the ones that are migrating to Teams and then Teams phone system. Our distribution channel here is primarily Microsoft partners, because the Microsoft partners are the ones that are selling the Office 365 licenses. They're selling the Teams licenses. They're talking to the customers, identifying those prospective customers looking to move to Teams phone system. So they're our channel to upsell those customers to Teams phone system. In that regard, we also have a direct sales organization, because the Microsoft partners don't cover everybody, particularly the very large companies, and we go after the larger companies on a direct basis that are migrating to Teams and offer our solutions to them, because they actually have an IT department that can support the solution.
Excellent. And now your historical rate, customer attrition rate, how's that average? I guess where it's sitting right now.
Yeah, so far it's still in the 5% range. Now we may see, which is pretty much what all the competitors in the industry are seeing. Now, will we see a dip in that, or I'm sorry, I guess I should say an increase in the attrition rate with COVID-19? It's certainly possible. We don't know the impact of some of these smaller companies possibly going out of business, but I think that would be a short-term blip, and we expect to stay on, that roughly 5% churn rate going forward.
So since your last presentation, or even previous presentations to Grapevine, you've entered into some relationships and partnerships. Maybe you could talk about those developments, what they mean for the company, and when you think the company should start to materially benefit from these relationships, why you made them.
Right, sure. Yeah, so the first announcement that we made is a partnership with FrontStage, which has developed a very nice omni-channel contact center solution that targets the mid-size and enterprise organizations. And that particular partnership, we have an exclusive distribution agreement in North America. And it's better to work with them with an advanced solution, in fact, more cost effective than actually building the solution ourselves. So we are working currently with FrontStage to integrate with our MaxCS PBX solution. We're also going to be working with them to integrate to Microsoft Teams. So we'll have one omni-channel contact center solution delivered only from the cloud that'll support both our PBX business as well as our Teams phone system business. Yeah, and for that one, just given the integration timelines, I think we'll start to see some revenue contribution in calendar Q3, which is Altigen's fiscal Q4. I don't think it'll be material, but we'll start to see customer acquisitions, and we'll start to see a material revenue impact in FY21, which begins October 1st. And the second partnership is with Neustar and the Trust ID solution. And as I had mentioned that they do the caller verification. Maybe that doesn't sound real exciting, but pretty much every bank and credit union is, in addition to other financial services organizations, but banks and credit unions are what Fiserv sells to. They need a solution like this because that fraud protection is so critically important to them. If someone gets access to their accounts on a fraudulent basis and drains a customer account, the bank or credit union's on the hook. So to deploy that Trust ID or trusted solution, it's quite an inexpensive insurance policy for the customer, but to us, it's a really nice revenue opportunity because we make money not only on the trusted solution, but they also have to have our SIP communication services. And we're just completing the integration to everything, both on the Fiserv side and the Altigen side this quarter. And much like FrontStage, I think in calendar Q3, Altigen fiscal Q4, we'll start to see some customer deployments, and we'll see some material revenue contribution in FY21.
And I want to ask another question related to what you just talked about here. Just for the novice investor who's not really familiar with the CAS space and the terminology, when you say omni-channel, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, it's one of those industry terms. So typically a call center, anyone that's called in, making a hotel reservation, rental car reservation, airline reservation, that's a call center, right? Because we're making a phone call into that organization. But with the advent of social media and email and those sorts of things, SMS, what companies want to deploy today are solutions that they can not only take voice phone calls, but if their customers choose, they want to send a text message and get a response. They want to send an email and make sure it's responded to quickly, not in 2 or 3 weeks, or send a fax in, or make a social media post, or do a web chat. All of those are considered media channels. And so the industry term is omni-channel, which means it's all of the digital media as well as the voice media rolled into one. And a company then can, whichever way the customer chooses to interact with the company, they can support that customer and make sure they give them proper customer service.
Okay. So moving on. So you've had some key legacy, you've had some legacy partnerships, and you've kind of talked about them. Fiserv and Microsoft. Anything else you want to say about Fiserv that you didn't talk about in the presentation? And before we get into Microsoft?
Well, yeah, perhaps just to put it in context for folks that may not have been on our on our earnings calls over the last few years and may not know who Fiserv is. As I mentioned, Fiserv is they're an $18 billion organization, and they pretty much do everything financial services. The group that we work with provides software solutions that automates an entire community bank or credit union and have roughly 15,000 customers in that area. So in addition to providing all the banking application support that bank or credit union needs, they actually white label Altigen solutions. So we are the bank by phone. If you call a Fiserv customer and you want to do a banking transaction by phone or check your balance, that's the Altigen interactive voice response or bank by phone application behind the scenes. If you call in and somebody answers the phone, for a lot of these customers, we're also the phone system. And what we're going to be doing going forward is adding the contact center piece to that. So Fiserv sees communications and particularly what they call digital customer engagement. In other words, support their banking and credit union customers to support their own clients any way that client wants to communicate with the bank or credit union. So yeah, this partnership's been going on for more than probably almost 15 years now. And they do exclusively distribute the Altigen products, at least in those areas that I had mentioned. So as we continue to work with them, with our cloud solutions now, I think there's a lot of upside opportunity for growth with a company like that.
But a lot of the growth, some of the future growth from Fiserv is going to depend upon the ability of their sales organization to sell your product.
Right.
And I'm wondering, so you have to have confidence in that. So I'm wondering how you feel about that process. Do they have the process to do that, and why your product, not other products?
Sure. No, that's a good question. Well, first of all, they have an exclusive distribution relationship with us, so they don't have to worry about Altigen or any other Altigen partner competing with them when they're selling an Altigen solution. But honestly, from their salespeople, their sales force, their perspective, trying to sell a hosted phone system or bank by phone is not very exciting. We really haven't had historically a very good contact center solution. So as we're rolling out the front stage contact center solution, they're much more excited, about that solution because all of their customers, and I would say that, well, virtually all, but in the high 90%, have to have a digital customer engagement strategy, which they can deliver on, with the omni-channel contact center solution. It's front stage at the core, but delivered by Altigen and hosted by Altigen. And in addition, the salespeople are actually comped on Altigen solutions. So it's just as if it were a Fiserv solution. And if you know anything about salespeople, if they don't get paid for it, they're not doing it. So that might be a tactical thing, but that's a big deal for the Fiserv sales force.
You're basically now in a position to give Fiserv pretty much a complete product offering in this whole arena.
Yeah, I would say that, because we do offer, and they do sell a lot of what we do, right? So they sell our SIP communication services. They're going to sell the Trust ID services. They sell our hosted PBX. They sell our bank by phone. But, from their perspective, the real money's in the contact center. And so, they haven't had that from us before. So that'll be, brand new for them.
Right. So let's talk about Microsoft. You've had that relationship for a long time too. Maybe you can talk about how long you've had that. You might have talked about it in the presentation, but including in your kind of answer here, maybe you can talk about their role in the UCaaS space and how they compare to other companies like 8x8 and RingCentral, and what any Microsoft is in regards to deploying its a competitive UCaaS solution.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, Microsoft has done a really nice job, but it's taken years of educating their customers that they actually have a phone system solution. RingCentral and 8x8 are certainly have been out there a little bit longer, and particularly targeting the SMB market. So they're probably more well known even than Microsoft. But now that we know that Teams has gone from, just 3 years ago, they had 1 million subscribers. Today, they have 75 million. A year ago, they had 10 million subscribers on Teams. Now they have 75 million. So all of a sudden, this is now pervasive in an organization. So Yeah, I mean, does an 8x8 or Ring Central might have a little bit of a feature advantage in some areas as compared to Microsoft, but they're A, Microsoft is closing the gap, and B, Altigen with our solutions does close the gap with what we do. So, but then you think about the, let's say the financial metrics and even the technology aspect that Teams phone system is part of Office 365. It's a very small license upgrade to go from the Teams component in 365, which is free, to add a couple of licenses for phone systems. So I don't think RingCentral and 8x8 have seen the impact yet of Teams phone system because the licensing for that is about half of what it costs to go acquire a RingCentral or 8x8 license for a customer. And they don't have the integration to Microsoft 365. They say they do, but they don't. And in fact, Microsoft in their own presentation, it's the only solution that integrates with 365. So I'm going to trust what Microsoft says and not what their competitors say. So I think we're going to see Microsoft, as they do when they put their mind to it, they're going to be a leading player in that space, and it's happening now.
Excellent. I'm assuming, and COVID-19, I'm assuming accelerating that.
Yeah, I mean, COVID-19 pushed them. Now that employers are working from home, you have to have better collaboration technologies, right? Than if you're sitting in the cube next to somebody. So that really pushed that forward. So the next phase is, okay, now we've got Teams deployed. Why do I need this other, quote unquote, other phone system? I'm going to get rid of that and put everything on Teams. It just makes sense. And I think you also asked about what inning they're in, but with Microsoft and boy, I think right now we'd have to say, even though they have 75 million Teams users, but that's in the 500,000 organizations, and they still have another 500,000 365 customers that haven't rolled out Teams. They're in the very early stages. I'd say possibly bottom of the first, now that COVID has kicked in, but they've got a long way to go to drive that business. And our strategy is clearly to work with those customers as they migrate to Teams. We're going to help them migrate to Teams phone system.
Excellent. Okay. All right, so a lot of UCaaS companies are talking about how the growth in Microsoft Teams is benefiting their growth prospects. What differentiates Altigen from competitors that also integrate with Microsoft Teams phone systems? Because you hear a lot of companies talking about it.
Yeah. Sure. Right. Well, I mean, lots of companies have Teams integration, but let's say they're not communications related. So, I'll just talk about those that are in the communication space, delivering phone systems or contact center or something like that, something that would be viewed as a competitor to Altigen. But I would have to say that generally speaking, you don't hear Microsoft endorsing those solutions because they're actually competing with Microsoft. But you hear some of the vendors saying they've got integration to 365, which, and I'll just say that they take an awful lot of liberties with their definition of integration, because the voice and the traffic is not processed on Teams phone system. It's processed on that competitor's platform. So that's not really integration. Our definition of integration, is that you use Microsoft Teams as the core processing platform. Your solution needs to be deployed in Microsoft Azure. You need to use Microsoft published APIs for your integration. You've got to use Teams as the collaboration platform. In other words, RingCentral and 8x8 have their own, collaboration platform, meaning video conferencing and desktop sharing. And then you also have to make it available natively inside of Teams as a Teams application. So when companies say they integrate, it's pretty weak, and the customers and partners know better. That doesn't really meet that definition of integration.
So you've had achieved significant growth in net income for the last 3 years. Over that time period, I think the company has only seen a total revenue growth CAGR of 8%. Has Altigen sacrificed growth for the sake of profitability? And I think that you addressed, I guess some of this has to do with your transition from on-premise to cloud, and kind of everything gets muddled there. So maybe you could just address that again a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good question. That's probably, let's say, my biggest challenge in communicating it to shareholders, because if you just look at our top line number, it looks like we're growing at 8 to 10% a year. And that's not very interesting. And I understand that. And that's certainly not where we want to be. But because we're in the process of migrating from this legacy on-premises business to a cloud business versus the fact if we were just a startup, if we were just a startup, we went from $0 to $7.5 million in a couple of years, people say you're doing great. But if I go from $0 to $7.5 million a year, but I lost $5 million on my legacy business, then it doesn't look so good. And that's really the position we're in. We're not selling legacy stuff anymore. We cut out our hardware sales. We're not selling upfront licenses. We're not selling service contracts because we're pushing everybody to the cloud. So we're foregoing that short-term revenue, for the greater benefit of monthly recurring revenue. And until we kind of wash through all of that existing legacy business, our top line will be muted. But I really think it's more important for investors to be focused on our cloud growth, which is growing, much more quickly than, our top line overall company growth.
And finally here, I guess this is a good way to wrap it up. You touched upon a lot of these, answer this question before. Just to summarize again, what are you doing to generate greater growth while also maintaining profitability moving forward?
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair question for sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have our business really formally segmented now into two distinct business or lines of business units. One is the IP PBX business that targets SMB. I view that as our cash cow business, right? We have a lot of customers that we migrate to the cloud, and we can do that very profitably. But I'm not going to get the 20, 30, 40% growth, out of that market because there are a lot of competitors in that space. And in addition, our view is that Microsoft Teams phone system, that PBX platform is going to be the ultimate winner. And so we're very much viewing the PBX business as a cash cow. We want to keep that going, of course, and provide, the proper capabilities to customers at proper price points so we can keep making money on that. But the real growth opportunity we're viewing as our Microsoft Teams business. So, for that business, we will invest. Now, why haven't we invested more? We're starting to. Partnerships with FrontStage, you'll see that's evidence of what we're doing, developing our Teams direct routing solution. But we're still waiting on this infamous Microsoft Graph API that we need to fully integrate with Teams phone system. And as that becomes available, that API becomes available, you're going to see greater investment from Altigen to spur even further growth in that area. But we do have a number of Teams direct routing customers. We have a number of customers looking at our contact center solution for Teams that can't deploy it because the API is not there. But I do expect to see, probably in FY21, we're going to start seeing some accelerated growth from Altigen because we've never had this Teams opportunity. All of our historical business, even though we've done a pretty good job of migrating our customers to the cloud, it's all based on that MaxCS legacy business migrating to the cloud. We haven't had that injection of new technologies and new markets like we do with Teams. So that's going to make a difference going forward.
Thank you very much, Jerry. A great job answering the questions. Again, if you listen to this presentation and there were questions that you wanted to ask but we didn't go over, please email us at conferences@littlegrapevine.com and we'll make sure we get them answered for you.